Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Segura webinar. I'm David Muniz, your host today, and today we're going to talk about cybersecurity trends for 2026. I love this time of the year because we got Spotify wrapped, and now we got YouTube wrapped. We see all the memories that we got for the year, and now we are going to see what the biggest threats in 2025 and what is expecting us in the next year in 2026. It's just a little bit that is left for the new year. Well, everyone, I'd like to welcome everyone to bring comments in this conversation. I know that you, Filipi, have already sent some messages in the YouTube channel. So everyone, please interact with us. We want this session to be an interactive session. We want everyone to participate in our webinar today. And well, first, I need to introduce these two amazing gentlemen that we have here today. First, I want to start with you, Pires. Another year, man. Here we are. Welcome. Nice to see you, man.
Hey, David. As always, we are here. Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here again. And this time of the year, as you said, it's about many memories of the year. So it's nice to see about many things about song, and not only that, but I think it's time to think about the future. So that's we are here to talk about the future, about threats, about safety, about identity, many things about to be safe. And thanks so much for inviting me to be here, for having me here, and I pass to Joseph. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, both of you. It's awesome to be here. I'm really excited. This is always my favorite time of the year, just to sit back and reflect. Look back on what's been happening throughout the year, and then really start planning. Because I think one of the most important things to do is, if you're looking forward to 2026, is to have a solid plan. And some of the trends will tell us, what direction and path we're going. And I think that's what's really important about it, is to look back, reflect, take that time, share the experiences, have a bunch of virtual coffees, which I've been having loads of for the past 2 weeks, talking with friends, and really start thinking about kind of how can we get ahead, how can we be safe, how can we secure, how can we protect identities and credentials in 2026, especially with the evolving and changing landscape, which is happening very, very rapidly. So we really have to think strategically about where do we need to be in the future and what's important and how to prioritize correctly. Hopefully, this discussion here is all about looking at our lessons learned and what we should be expecting in 2026.
Definitely. And identity now is it's a core part of the business. We've seen the Gartner event last week, and they talked a lot about how identity should be in the forefront of protection in terms of cybersecurity. And excellent that you guys brought the lessons learned, because I think what really helps us to get ready for the future is understand what happened in the past, what can we learn from the past, what did we fail, can we win. So I think it's a good time of doing this kind of reflection. And I want to start with you, Pires. Let's do a recap on 2025. Well, I know that you are usually on the protection side, on the blue team, red team, on the pen testing, malware labs. You are now leading the identity threat labs here at Segura. So without further ado, let us know what you learned in 2025. What was your key takeaway?
I think the most thing that I've have seen for this year actually is in terms of threat labs, or in terms of threat. So I would say that many in terms of threat actors. So I'm seeing many things about they don't expend more money to trying to pay for 0 days, and try to get more, like, or to try explore specifically environment using those 0 days, or try to buy using the dark web market, let's say. So I'm seeing something in terms of identity specifically. So they decide to pay people, like the insider threats, to open door for them. So that's the main things that I'm seeing this year, 2026, not to 25, sorry. Not only because we saw many things about this topic in Brazil, but I saw many things in the US as well, in Europe. And I think it's keeping being one of the trends for 2026 in terms of threat actors, let's say, because again, so they can pay for access, for credentials, for secrets, and the applications require be authenticated between app to app. So once they have this access, they don't need to have this 0-day access. So they don't need to explore vulnerabilities, even though I know that it's quite easy to have many applications vulnerable. So it's cheaper just to pay for access. So I think this is in my perspective, was the biggest trend, not trend. I mean, the biggest assets in terms of attack.
Great. Well, Joseph, in 2025, you had a great presentation on AI. I think it was, in 2025, we saw a surge of AI, but also, when I hear your perspective, what made 2025 different than the other years?
Absolutely. I mean, when I reflect back and I look at all of the different, new trends and technologies and advancements throughout the year, and of course, I've been doing lots of my speaking sessions have all been centered around AI versus AI, or how to, get the best value out of AI. But when I look back in 2025 and I think about what was a moment to kind of, that I think it's important that we have to recognize, and I think it's the Louvre incident. The one that basically ultimately the crown jewels had been stolen from the Louvre. And we will reflect back and, out of all these technology advancements and all of the changes and, improvements that's been made, it's really important to get the basics right. And we look back, multiple systems, the security systems had really weak credentials. And we reflect back, well, look, it's still important that as we, start looking at new technologies and new strategies, and the advancements of AI, to get the value out of those, it means you really need to get the essentials and the basics solid and right. So I think it's a moment in time is that as we take the time over the holidays and into the new year and in 2026, have a strategy to make sure how much of the basics do you have already implemented and in place. So for me, the Louvre incident was probably it was a memorable one, and it shows you how important it is, to get rid of weak default, poor chosen passwords, and use solutions to really help at least get the essentials correct and the right controls in place.
Definitely. Well, let's move on. Now that we see the takeaways for 2025, let's move on to the trends. That's what everyone is expecting now. So as we're moving to the end of the year and the next year. And I will start with the AI, Joseph. We've seen the surge of AI, ChatGPT, so malicious attackers using it for their attacks. We also have the two pillars. So we have not only AI to protect IAM, but also identity and access management to protect AI. So how do you see that? Well, how do you see not only that, but also AI for the attacker and AI for who is defending? How can we work with this balance?
Absolutely. So I mean, I view AI as an accelerator. It's like, and data is the fuel to that accelerator. The more data you have, the more you can advance and do things much faster at a faster pace. And we're seeing that both in the defensive capabilities, about being able to analyze login events, session recordings, activities, security controls at pace, really, really well. And we've also seen it on the offensive side, where attackers are using it for much more advanced, sophisticated phishing campaigns and automation around deepfakes. So we're seeing AI definitely be an accelerant. I think what I'm starting to see is that it's how do we bring humans and AI together? I think that's really one of the important trends that I'm starting to see, is that how do we make sure that AI's more assisting us in making decisions much faster. So it's the assisted AI where I think is going to be the big trend in 2026. But if I've got lots of data, how can I use that data in order to help me make the decisions? It's almost going to be like you've got your first level support, or your entry level development engineers and DevOps teams and security teams, those who's analyzing detections and log events. how do we make sure that we give them the assistance so that they can move to level 2 and level 3 faster? How do we, accelerate their learning curve? And I think that's really where I think AI is going to make the difference in 2026. It's going to help give us the power in order to learn faster and move faster.
What do you think, Pires?
Yeah, that makes sense. This point about in terms of attack, I mean, the things that I'm seeing in terms of trends for 2026 is about how the attacker, they are creating not new, but I mean, in terms of phishing, is more hyper personalized, let's say. So they are trying to get something more realistic in terms of, or more real. They're trying to phish in the people. And I think this is one of the things more in terms of weapon, for the attacker perspective. And the defensive side, has Joseph said, so I think it's more like the learning, that how the AI can learning about that, and how they can, do this mix in terms of logs, in terms of, collecting the, in terms of access pattern and privilege access, those type of things. They try to get this type, or even the anomaly behavior. They try to get this mix, and for defensive side, they try to using this AI to predict something before the attacker happen. And so that's my main takes for both sides, in terms of AI.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, what I see is that now malicious attackers are exploring AI to produce convincing emails, to do phishing. So they are really using that, and people are really falling into that. I like to say that it's no like we say it is in Portuguese. You have to see to believe. And nowadays, you don't have to see to believe, because you can have an AI generated image to fool yourself, and then you can fall on a social engineering attacks. I like your line, Joseph, when you said that AI is a tool to be used by us humans. So we don't have to replace humans with AI. And the AI needs to support human decisions. It's not the AI that needs to decide what needs to be done. And I think it's going to be a challenge how we can make people understand what is AI and what is not AI, so they don't fall into a phishing attack, and then they can affect the cybersecurity in the company. Also, when we're talking about AI for user behavior, for example, so understanding, detecting earlier attacks, and of course, AI agents that we need to protect. They are multiplying in the environments, and we need efforts to protect them. Well, moving on to the next trend. Please interrupt me if you want to add anything here. So the next one is the quantum countdown, and I think we had webinars on that, right, Joseph? I think we had webinars with IDM Works, our partners, on the certificate aspect. We have quantum computers, we have the certificate life cycle that is reducing. So please, what is coming in 2026? What leaders should expect in 2026 in terms of quantum and encryption?
Absolutely. One of the things, when we look at quantum, this has been a buzzword and term that's been used for many, many years now, especially around cryptocurrencies and other types of technologies. And when we look at, from, breaking certificates and the ability to communicate. So for me, I think, the quantum countdown really is that it's the time where we can no longer push it to the future. It's the point where governments are really starting to realize that we must take action now. When we look back on the certificate lifecycle, that's reducing significantly over the next couple of years down to days. And that's basically really the enforcement is that realizes that we can no longer just sit back and wait. And this means that, especially around things like persistent data that doesn't change, and a lot of the attackers are collecting data now with the hope that the quantum will give them the ability in order to decrypt later. So there's a large amount of data collection happening, pending the ability to be more quantum safe. And there's lots of algorithms out there, but now we're starting to see, I've been attending lots of roundtable discussions with different governments, and I've seen them looking to take action and really starting to put in strategies over the next year to make sure that their critical data and sovereign data of citizens is protected with quantum safe algorithms and encryption. So we're in a timeline that it's no longer wait till tomorrow or push it down to the 2027. I believe that 2026 is the year that we all must move and start really thinking about at least data at rest, and then look into data in transit later. We must encrypt the data, and we can no longer push it down to the future.
Yeah, and I think it's in terms of threat landscape, in terms of quantum, I think they are trying to, the things that I'm seeing this for the training for the next year is more like using this, trying to break this kind of certificate or this kind of algorithms that they have right now, and it's a kind of a war, let's say, like they try to fight against those type of things, and but for me, I think is still like, for the attacker, they are still learning or understand how the really quantum is applicable in terms of threats, and in terms of threats, or attacks, they are, most part of them, they are using more simple things than using exactly quantum. I know that's in terms of processing things, or to be more CPU or memory to using this quantum technology. I think it's quite not easy to manage this in terms of defensive side, but again, in terms of attack, they are not looking to that for. I'm not seeing this as a trend for 2026 in terms of the threat perspective.
Well, it's going to be a huge effort, I think, to update all the infrastructure to be ready to this quantum change. Is this something that maybe we can compare to the Y2K? What is your view on that? What are companies doing enough work, or they should be doing more? Because at least from my perspective, it's a lot of work, and well, I don't think if many companies are doing that.
I think for me, it's a phased approach. You have to do it in a phased approach, and that's one of the things I mentioned. My kind of original kind of mention is around there's persistent data and non-persistent data. Data that changes often, probably something that you can wait a little bit later. Data that's persistent, health records, doesn't change. Employment records are persistent. So there's lots of types of data that organize intellectual property, legal cases, historical information that is persistent, doesn't change, but still needs to be protected. That's the type of data you want to target first. So, categorize your data into two areas: persistent data that is, stays the same for the next 10, 20 years, and then non-persistent data you can do a little bit later. But then once you've prioritized it, then you start thinking about data at rest. So I want to make sure I've got quantum resistant encryption in place that can be resistant against quantum-based attacks. And then later you start moving into your communications, the movement of data in transit. So you can do it in a phased approach, but I believe that at least the data at rest that is persistent, you must do immediately. You must already start planning, because attackers are collecting data. They may not be actively trying to break the algorithms at the moment. Some larger nation states might be trying that. But it's really important to make sure that you do protect the data from the future, from future threats.
Yeah, that is interesting, because if you compare, for example, two main events in terms of cyber, which is, Black Hat in US, or let's say a Black Hat in Middle East that happened 3 weeks ago, I think, if not wrong, in Riyadh. So if you compare both big events, that 40,000 people, involved in this both event. So I just saw one or two companies, presenting in terms of booth, talking about quantum technology. So I agree that since this is just early phase, it's still like in terms of to giving this for the in terms of product or in terms of technology, it's we'll get there, but it's like in terms of the whole companies, but its phase is its early phase right now.
Yeah, I believe it's going to be pushed from regulatory or government. It's already coming through things like NIST is coming through the Cyber Resiliency Act and other types of regulations. So the prioritization has been mostly with governments, critical infrastructure. NIST 2 pushes it as well, but later organizations will likely have to follow. Especially if you do business with governments, that's where you're going to get the pressure.
That's what usually happens. I mean, companies, they start to act when government starts to enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the third trend. It is, zero trust. And zero trust is usually a requirement on regulation, on government regulation. Usually the cybersecurity regulations are tied to zero trust. Well, this is something that we have been exploring for quite a long. I know you, Pires, have talked about this. I also have talked about this with you, Joseph, in your podcast, when we measure the trust in cybersecurity and also in human relationships. And I've been hearing about zero trust since I started working here at Segura, like 7, 8 years ago. And this is still a trend. This is still a trend. Well, zero trust, for those who don't know, probably you all know, but zero trust is like you don't have the security perimeter. So, and then, well, what happens, Joseph? What happens when you don't have the security perimeter? What has to occur?
It does. I mean, the whole term does come from the whole network segmentation side of things. That's kind of where originally viewed, and it was the assumed breach, and that you assume that you've already got attackers on your network, and therefore you have to go through continuous. Every transaction needs to be continuously verified. You want to make sure that you have a risk appetite, and based on that risk appetite, you apply the right security controls. For me, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with zero trust. I mean, I love it from a security standpoint, but from a marketing and a business perspective, it's always a challenge. So I always find that when you do have zero trust as part of your strategy, which it is maturing, we're starting to really get the fundamentals, identity and the principle of least privilege and authentication authorization is a very strong pillar and foundation of the zero trust approach. But when you translate that into the business, you have to have it with a much more business mindset about you have to change zero trust into something that the business understands. It's about continuous verification. It's about reducing risk. It's about business resilience. So sometimes, that's my love-hate is I love what it does for security, but the translating it into business is important. And I think that's where the maturity is coming from, is that we're starting to realize that as an industry, is that, yes, it's great in regards to how it protects organizations, but when we talk in business sense and getting the business support and business input, we therefore must use a bit of a different language in order to make sure it's successful as well. But it is something, if you do practice a zero trust mindset, and you do get a lot of those pillars in place, such as authentication, authorization, and the governance side of things, and the principle of least privilege and continuous verification authentication, it will give you a very strong baseline in order to do a lot more things, across your entire business stack. And it will give you a clear understanding of business risk.
Yeah, this is interesting about zero trust, because we are talking about maturity. So I think the company, I always like to mention the 3 Ps, like people, process, and proceed and product in terms of how you can establish this maturity. So first you need to establish this process. The second one, communicate to people and implement the right product. Usually, as Joseph says, is more related to the marketing. In many times is related just only to the network. But in terms of zero trust, is everything about identity. And I mean, everything in the company should be thinking about the identity in terms. But if you think more about the OWASP top 10, so they bring the new top 10 for 2025 this year. So the first one could continue to be the broke access control. The second one is misconfiguration. If you see those type of things, is related to the zero trust, because one is the way that you can access this, or you control this type of access, or how you can control this access. And the second one is in terms of misconfigurations. So everything is in terms of zero trust is about how you can set these configurations in terms of on-premises or hybrid or cloud. So how you establish this using the proper, product, or even implementing the proper process in the first P. And the third one for the OWASP top 10 is about, the software supply chain, which is, or in terms of failure, which is another point that comes to the first point that I'm seeing this year in 2025, which is the attackers, they are paying for this kind of insider threat to explore the supply chain. So everything is about zero trust in the end of the day. So if you think about, for example, the proper OWASP top 10 in terms of the LLMs, for example, so you can see the first 2 or 3. One is, if I'm not wrong, it's a proper injection. The second one is about sensitive information, is data again, and the third one is a supply chain. So which is, if you see, it's everything is about zero trust. So in the end of the day, so you need to establish this maturity in terms of zero trust. So process need to be established, and the second one, the user need to be communicated, because you can avoid, or you try to avoid this misconfigurations, or like the supply chain, because your business, your company needs to be involved with others company. So it's about supply chain basically.
Great. Yeah. You mentioned, well, we talked a lot about identity. We're talking a lot about identity. We said in the beginning that identity is related to the business, is growing the importance in organizations. And we say that identity is the new security perimeter, because that's how we are going to detect if the user is trying to do something malicious, and to establish this trust process. So I like to say that you have a baseline of trust. Joseph, I agree with you. I hate the term zero trust, because, well, it's not zero trust, actually. It's zero implicit trust. So you need to build a trust in the user. There's going to be a threshold of risk that you're willing to take. And then you need to analyze if something surpasses this threshold, then you need to take action. If the actions of the users are below the threshold, well, probably this is under your managed risk, let's per se.
Absolutely. Zero trust is, for me, is zero assumptions. You're not assuming that security has already been satisfied. And also means that you must also prioritize zero friction. Must be security.
I was going to say that. Definitely. Okay, guys, moving on to the fourth trend, the physical frontier. What does it mean? Well, we see, I'm just going to say the words and then I'll pass it to you. OT, IoT, SCADA systems, smart cities. Why is this important for 2026?
I mean, realistically, the air gap is going. The air gap is no longer there. And these types of environments, critical infrastructure, supply chains, power, energy, utility, all of that is now converging, and the IT and OT are coming together. And what it really means is that what these systems had, somewhat segmentation isolation, is that IT problems can quickly become critical infrastructure problems, OT problems. And that's really what we're starting to see. We're starting these cascading events where something in the IT can force the OT in order to stop producing. Sometimes from a safety perspective, sometimes, we saw in the oil pipeline where it was a billing, issue. We saw it with the Jaguar Land Rover incident, where basically it stopped production of vehicles and brought, it impacted the UK GDP of a single incident. And cost billions in order of basically incidents. So this is the physical frontier. Is we're starting to see IT has OT implications, and we must look to ensure as they converge, resilience is possible.
Yeah, I agree. We can see many events in terms of critical infrastructure, as Joe says. So we saw the event that happened in the beginning of this year, not exactly in terms of threat, but in terms of, let's say electricity, the outbreak that happened here in Portugal and in France, and it impacted Spain, in France. So there are connections between those three countries. So like in terms of physical frontier, so basically the attacker know that. So, or even, for example, the Brazilian bank, for example, it's not physical attack in terms, but it's more like So if you understand the whole supply chain involved with that, so you can basically stop the frontier in terms of attack. So it's keeping being the vulnerable, let's say, in terms of OT or smart city, as David mentioned it, because again, so there are many companies, small companies, let's say, they are creating these proper applications, and sometimes they have the weak type of credentials or authentications process. They use it like 3 or 4 digitals, or even 5 digital or 6 digital, and they don't use it like the complexity of the authentication process or this type of thing. So it's to be easier, or the explanation is that it basically.
Yeah. Well, OT systems were usually disconnected. So the kind of security controls that we have in OT are much different from IT. And I think what needs to happen is that OT now needs to catch up with the security controls that we have in OT as the systems are more exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, human risk management. Well, social engineering. We were talking about
whatever
this
you want.
AI. It's all connected. Deep fakes, social engineering. So I think that the question is, how can organizations be prepared and can address human risk management?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'll add my kind of quick thoughts here. Is that it's getting so sophisticated that even for security professionals, it's getting very difficult to be able to tell the difference between authentic and abusive phishing campaigns and social engineering. It means that we can no longer rely on just awareness training alone. We must have tools in place that provide multiple layers of protection for users, and this really means that we have to move security into the background, and we can't assume that we can train every person in the world to be cybersecurity professionals, even when it's getting difficult for us to be able to spot malicious emails. It's so embedded, it's so hidden that we need multiple levels of security controls. And this really means that protecting our identities, protecting our credentials, multi-factor authentication, session recording, rotating credentials, ephemeral keys. We really need multiple layer defense. And this is how we get users protected, is by moving security into the background and making it a natural layer of defense and not something that people have to be able to detect.
Yeah, indeed. So training awareness, it is one of the composition, as is the multiple layers, as Joseph says. So like it's a combination. So if you have a good zero trust established, like the first one, the first P process, the second one is the people, which is the human, let's say management things. So if you have this aligned in our company, you can get there. Yeah, I know that's not easy because again, it's a combination of process, people, and product. So you should have, even if you have a training sessions, whatever, trying to teach your people in terms of how they attack it, even in the easy way, in terms of dangers of the internet. It's quite complicated because one of my talks is about PDF militia. So like the guys that work in financial sector, or not sector, but the financial team, or even the HR team, the people team, they need to receive many PDFs every single day. So they need to open this. So in terms of, you can teach the guys, okay, how you can see and identify this kind of malicious PDF. But in the end of the day, you need to have the other tools to help you to protect against those attacks.
Yeah. There's a line that says that human people are the weakest link in the 3 Ps. So we have processes, people, and product. And some people don't agree with that. I like to say that because it's hard. Well, it's difficult. Well, it's not impossible to circumvent the product. So the technology is there. You cannot bypass that. But you can bypass people. You can fool people to do what you want them to do. That's what all social engineering is about. Yeah, and company needs to be ready to make people aware of that. What is fake and what is real. Now, hybrid workforce. Well, during the pandemic, we saw companies moving to remote, and now we are seeing people coming back to the office. But I prefer that's my personal opinion. I like the hybrid approach, which combines the best of remote work
Good
with
for
the
you,
best
sir.
of in person. With the best of in person. I like to have the human interaction. I think it's part of how we can build teams and build things together. But how can we protect, and what are attackers doing to exploit this hybrid workforce, and what companies needs to do to protect against them?
Yeah. So just that kind of, I think we also, sometimes we assume hybrid, we talk about geographical location or by device. I think we need to expand our mind beyond that. And what do I mean by that? I've seen an evolution throughout my entire career. I've seen, we went to bring your own device, and we went to, it was bring your own office during COVID times. Then we moved to bring your own identity, which is the IDPs, single sign-on, federated, identity providers. And now we're moving to bring your own mini version of you, your agentic AI agent. So when we think of hybrid is, it's many things. And when we think about, cybersecurity for the hybrid workforce, is that, we might be interacting with digital versions of ourselves. In the future, it might be a version of Joe that's just specifically for speaking, a version of Joe for writing, a version of me for logistics, and there's lots of different things I can extend into agents, like many versions. I always call it the Tamagotchi of the current industry, our digital companions, let's say. And it means that every interaction that we have from humans in the hybrid workforce, bring your own device, your identity, your agentic AI agents, we must protect it. We must make sure that at every layer has a protection. And what's the intersection between all of this? Is identity. Identity is the intersection between every communication, every authentication, every authorization, every permission, every workflow. And that's what we need to look at, is what's the common thing we can control and protect. And it is identity. So for the hybrid workforce, we need to look beyond that traditional view of it and start thinking about where's it going in the future, and how important is identity to protecting it.
Yeah, indeed. So, like in terms of the attacker perspective, so they are creative. So basically, they try to explore. So it's a movement. So they know that the companies are moving to the hybrid, module, let's say. So they are seeing this. So in the past, they tried to some strategy to phishing the people using like remotely. So now they know, because it's easy to see on LinkedIn opportunities, the company they're putting like hybrid, you need to go 2 or 3 times a week in the office. So, or even if they try to hiring people or to using this a phishing technique. So like for the attacker perspective, in terms of how they are used or keeping using this, again, is another way to explore people. I think this is linked, this trend number 6 and number 5 is totally linked in terms of human and hybrid, because in the end of the day, how they can use social engineering to explore people, to inducing people to clicking something. So basically is that the things. So of course, some position in terms of a work, so you need to be remotely, like in terms of speaking or even in other position. But I agree with you, David. I prefer work remotely, but sometimes you need to go to the office to talk with the people. And but again, if the company, let's moving back to the zero trust, if you don't have the process established, like how you connect the people, how you using this identity connected in terms of machine, in terms of a laptop, for example. I remember in the past, you need to have their own laptop from the company that we had the bring your own device, as Joseph mentioned it. So like, it's a technology, the evolution, not in terms of evolution, but in terms of how you can be adaptable in terms of work.
Yeah. And you have to think about every time you join an online meeting today, you've got the note taker, you've got the transcriber,
Yeah.
you've got the translator. And now I can attend 10,000 meetings a week with my digital companion. And that's the things we have to think about, is that, we also need to be able to secure those and differentiate between which ones are trusted and which ones are not.
Definitely. And we're talking about workforce, so we should not forget about third parties. So it's employees and also third parties. And remember, it's useless if you protect your internal, your employees. If there's a third party and you don't assess their security, you don't understand what they are doing in terms of security. So enforcing protection in your third parties is essential to protect your organization and your environment against cyber attacks. Okay,
Yeah, but that's interesting, because I like to mention that okay, we're using a lot of times the terms third party, but many companies are using this business module to hiring people as a third party, and that are giving the high access. So I know people that have, or had, let's say in the past, much access than me as an employee, full-time employee, and the guy was like a third party, but it's just a hiring business process. So you need to be very, very, very strong, established process to authenticate those peoples.
Yeah, we had several cases. Toyota, I think, was victim of, we could name a handful of those cases.
Yeah.
Guys, we're getting to the end. We're getting to the 7th already. Well, I'd love to spend more time here with you, but I know we have until the end of the time. So the next one is the regulatory enforcement. Well, we see many countries on passing cybersecurity regulation. We have data sovereignty. Many countries are worried about that. The Middle East, Europe, those are some of the regions that at least in my perspective, I see much tighter control. We also have AI regulation, cross-border cybersecurity law. Well, how do you think that impacts companies, and how do you think that this helps protecting information?
Absolutely. I think, I've been participating in a number of these regulations, back from the EU AI Act. I was part of a subject matter expert for a working group. And I think what it's really looking at is now it's evolving to being really considering, risk to society. And that's also when you think about data sovereignty as well. It's also forcing organizations that they can't go fully cloud, they have to go hybrid, because the data itself is very sensitive and needs to be protected. So I think we're in a bit of a change and transformation when it comes to protecting data, especially when it gets, seeing the rise of AI as well in how it's using data, the AI browser and what's happening. And so I think that it's going to be a bit of a mix. I think in 2026, we'll see some countries lessen or loosen the regulation around certain technologies in order to try and get ahead. And I think other geographical regions will try to strengthen regulation and compliance in order to protect the data. So it's going to be a bit of a mix 2026 for this. But I do see that organizations, no matter where you are, you're going to have to deal with it because it is cross-border. These regulations aren't, just in a location. It's because you're dealing with data that's in transit. So it will be a lot more and a lot more stricter as we move forward.
Yeah, indeed. It's simple like this. So you need to, sometimes we think, okay, my data is just here in Portugal or even in US or in Brazil, but doesn't matter. So if your data is in transit or in another country, you need to be, above this or using this law in this specific region. So in terms of regulatory, is basically need to be adaptable, or your company needs to be adaptable in this type of thing. So if you are producing or creating a specifically product, if you are selling product, like you need to be involved with that. And I know that sometimes it's just thinking about revenue in the end of the day, in terms of, okay, I have my product and I need to sell for some company or providing this. I don't know, like for the energy, for example, you have a specifically product, but everything that you have, or if you have a data in transit or everything you need to sell for any country, you need to be, or if you're involved with whatever identity, you need to look into that. It's simple like this. It's not, I know that's not simple, but you need to be aware of that.
Yeah, and well, it's gonna get worse. More and more countries are passing more tighter controls and tighter regulations on that.
It's a case of choose the one that's the strongest, and hopefully it applies to everything else. That's what Is you try, if the regulation's here, you try to set your security standards a little bit higher. That should always be the case.
Definitely. Guys, we are heading to the 8th trend. Please send comments here. What you're thinking so far? Which trend do you think is affecting you the most? So we want to hear from you guys. We want you to interact during this session. Okay. Okay. Move on to the 8th one. Security as a code and DevSecOps maturity. So I usually hear that developers, they don't like security because security usually restricts their work. So what is holding companies back? What do you think that companies needs to do to take out this image that security is coming to stop the work and prevent the work from happening?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the whole shift left secure by design approach. And this is really what we really need to look at, is that the cost of doing security as early in the coding and development as possible versus the cost of trying to add it on later. And we do see that the cost of adding it on later typically is a result of major data breaches and costs and trying to fix things after it's already, the problem's already occurred. This is going to get into where a lot of even AI that's doing the automation of coding and creating templates, hopefully will be considering the things like the OWASP top 10 best coding practices for API and web applications that will be incorporated in by default. So it's not only important that we do secure by design and build it in, but it's to make sure that it's actually turned on and being used, and doing secure as early as possible in the phase rather than trying to bolt it on later. Because we know doing it later has a much, much higher cost. So you should be thinking about it, and we should be making sure that we have automation in place to help us do this better.
David, allow me to disagree with you in terms of developer don't like about that. So they
No problem,
didn't
man.
like it. They didn't like in the past, but I think for not this year, but the last 2 years, the developer, they are changing their mind about this in terms of security, mainly because of the technology evolution about the AI, because they are seeing it in terms of OWASP. Like in the past, we just have an OWASP top 10 for applications and mobile. So now we have an API, we have a for LLMs, we have a for like agentic AI right now. So that's the type of things that we are bringing inside of the development. So I know that in terms of maturity, so one of the things that I helped many companies in my career is they need to implement the SDLC, which is the software development lifecycle, and they should put in the S in front of that with secure software development lifecycle. But in the past, it is a big problem in terms of developer and security guys. But I think the last 2 years, they are changing this mindset about that. Because of that, it's more easy to understand about this security as a code or this security by design things, and implementing the culture that is involved about the DevSecOps. It's not a product, but it's about culture, about architecture. So I think we are growing in terms of this specifically trend, and I think it's very interesting in terms of, if you see, for example, the Google, they buy Wiz, and it's about infrastructure, about cloud, that they bought some things, some company that look into this DevSecOps approach. And I think this is one of the very interesting trend. And if you see, in the end of the day, okay, security is not exactly identity. The code, in fact, is not identity. But when you build this, you need to deliver it. You need to deliver the endpoint in terms of the access or the API, which is the machine identity. So everything is involved with machine identity or no human identity.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, moving on to the 9th trend of today's webinar. Well, we've seen a movement of vendor consolidation, and even in identity, we see that. So we have converged identity platforms, we have identity fabric. So the purpose is that we have a unified tool to solve various problems. But I want to understand from you, what do you think that CISOs should take into account when creating this whole security stack to make it successfully and not create blind spots?
Absolutely. I think this has been a huge, I think this has been accelerating the last 2 years. And attending a lot of conferences this year, I've seen, lots of discussions around this topic. And really what it comes down to is that you want to be able to, with a very efficient, optimized security team, because organizations don't have unlimited resources, they don't have unlimited budgets. So you need to be able to do as much as possible, but with fewer solutions and solutions that give you, let's say, orchestration interoperability that can work seamlessly within your environment with other tools. And this is what it's really about. It's about solutions working together. It's about that integration. It's about interoperability and be able to do a lot more with basically solutions that provide you integration inroads into your entire ecosystem. And that's what this is all about. It's about, it doesn't necessarily mean a platform that I will interact with every day, but it's a platform that brings back a set of world-class capabilities that can actually integrate and work across my ecosystem, optimize as much as possible. And organizations, in order to be able to grow and be able to do things really well, they need platforms and interoperability to do that. And that's what I think the big trend's coming from.
Yeah, they need to be fast in terms of, as you talk about the C-level, they need to answer fast. So they need to go to a special place and press one single button and receive the one single answer. It's simple like this. This is the dream, right, Joseph? So just receive. This is the perfect dream. Like, okay, I have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. Just go to the platform, clicking the button, you have the wonderful answer. So like. Because of that, they're trying to consolidate the platforms, and of course, if you have a chance in terms of your organization, your company, to buy a platform that is all in one, everything integrated, or even if you have a bottom, like nowadays, actually, this is a funny thing. But so one of the things that I'm seeing some product specifically is the bottom about insights that's coming through the AI. So they look into the platform, look into everything, and bring it to the insights. This is a kind of, in double quotes, the bottom about the answer. I know that's not the whole answer that you should receive in terms of the C-level, but in terms of to have a one single platform or have it all in one, consolidate everything. So as much as possible to integrate the many security tools or even infrastructure tools, and to receive the more fast answer, maybe you can be more efficient. Maybe.
It's how well you plan and put the strategy in place and execute.
Yeah.
Well, in the end, I think when you're talking about a security tool and platforms, I think you need to have a tool where you can easily do the things that you are supposed to do, easy to use. You can quickly find it, intuitive, so you can do actions in the end faster than what you were doing using several tools. I think that's in the end how the human is going to operate this tool and the benefit
it's
that
not
it's going to get.
Yeah, and not only that, Dave, but if you see, like, there are a bunch of many big brands, they trying to integrate between them, like to be fast, like they like to. We see big techs, they are trying to have like, if you go to the website, you can see the partners or the channels, but if you can see other things related to the integration things in terms of integrations.
Mm-hmm.
So like how they sharing the API things, how they consolidate things. In the end of the day, everyone, they are trying to fight against the same attacker, the same threat. We're fighting the same war.
That's what the important here is. It's collaboration, and that's the ability to collaborate together, best in breeds, and provide the insights, as you say, Filipi, that will give you the knowledge and context.
Definitely. Guys, we are going to pass a little bit of the time. This is an excellent conversation. I'm enjoying very much. So just to let you know that we might pass a little bit of the time today. Well, let's move on to the last trend, actually. Next and last trend, which is cyber resilience over cyber defense. I'll just leave it with the questions. How can we shift a mindset from prevent everything to recover fast and ensure cyber resilience.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the most important topics throughout the entire trends. Is organizations need to be able you have to assume breach. You have to be able to when incidents do happen, and they will happen, is you have to know that your business can continue quickly as possible. We can go back to the JLR, the Jaguar Land Rover incident this year. You can see that as a business resiliency example. So for me, I think I always look at the metaphor, which is you might install a fire alarm in whatever you're building, but if that fire alarm goes off, if you haven't invested in the ability to respond, getting the fire response, getting the incident response, getting the service that you need to be able to recover and prevent that from spreading, that's really what resilience is all about. So you need to go through the process of practicing and simulating, assuming you've got a breach. How do you react? How do you respond? What if scenarios? And it's really important to go through that, practice and simulate, because that's what makes you more resilient. If you start identifying areas where you haven't got the right processes and the right experience and knowledge and the right context, it's going to make the ability to recover from an incident much more difficult. Those who have put resiliency in place, we can see pure examples of they might have had an incident and their stock market might have been hit by 10, 15%. Days after, they recovered and even better because the response has been solid. And that's the importance of resiliency, is that it's about survivability. It's about when bad things happen, you can recover and you can operate and get back to operation as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I heard something in 2010, 15 years ago. Yeah, exactly. That's it. This is a funny thing. So like, if you won't be like, I mean, let me rephrase this. So basically the phrase that I heard was, so if not be attacked until now, you be attacked.
Yes.
So
yes.
like simple like this. It's one director from the FBI, if I'm not wrong. But basically is about you be attacked. So how you can respond or proactively before to receive this, because you receive the attack. Basically, maybe you are thinking, okay, Philip, my company is not too big like the big techs, or I don't sell big products, but man, maybe you cannot be like a target for the APT groups, but there are another type of criminals. They are trying to explore you, so you need to be aware with that. So it's about resilience. So if you can work proactively before this type of attack happened against your company, will be nice. So because in the end of the day, again, everyone will be attacked. So we receive an attack, so everyone will be receiving this thing. So we need to be prepared, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the term goes down to is that there's those who know they've been breached and those who haven't yet discovered it. It really comes down to, and to your point, Filipi, is when you think about that scenario, I think it's really important for organizations to realize that they think they're too small. Is that if your company's making money, or you have data, or have connections to large organizations, you can simply become a secondary victim, or you can become a victim of financial fraud, which is very common for small businesses. So it's really important to make sure that you don't assume that you're too small or not important enough. You assume, just make sure that you're protecting the assets and value that's important to you. And that's really comes down to is look at your business and think about what's the important assets that I can't survive without, and make sure you've got a resiliency plan in place for all of those.
Yeah.
In the end, I think is what is going to tell the effects of a cyber attack is your ability to detect and respond to it. That's what's going to tell if it's going to be a small breach or if it's going to be a big breach.
Yeah. I mean, my personal experience is I used to run the ambulance service. So I've learned a thing or two about resiliency in ambulance service. That's one thing, is you have two of every system. You have to have resiliency in place. It's so critical. It's such a critical service that you think about, when that emergency call comes in, is all the things that happens after that call about making sure you can get an ambulance to the victim or to the patient as quickly as possible is a life and death situation. And that's what organizations need to find is when that call comes in, how quickly they respond to getting to that patient is essential.
Excellent. Yeah, totally agree, guys. Guys, we have finished the trends, but I want to hear from the audience. What trend is your top priority? Is it something that it's here that we talked today? Is it something that you visualize as a trend in cybersecurity? Please use your comments to send what are your thoughts on that. And while you are sending these thoughts, I have a question here for you guys. Ready?
Yeah.
Pedro, thanks for the question. Hi, guys. Nice talk. Thank you. Considering the global adoption of AI in the workplace, how can organizations effectively assess their security maturity to ensure the safe and responsible use of this technology? Wow.
Yeah, we have a problem here because we have the word effectively. This is quite complicated word. No, I'm kidding. So, like, I think it's interesting questions in terms of because we can discuss many times here or much time using here to discuss this, because nowadays there are a bunch of AIs available in the market. So probably you are, you heard about ChatGPT, Gemini, but another bunch of AIs, and of course there are free version and there are paid version. So like we should have kind of a process established in terms of what kind of data your employee or your can share with this AI in terms of assets or in terms of identity, or if you are using agentic AI, if there is AI offering you the agentic specifically, or if the product using agentic AI technology as well. So in the end of the day, sometimes, or even this moment, we have this kind of sharing NDA things, and we should trust, and that the only thing we have, and if you have the process established, maybe we can try design this. But if you don't have any like process established, will be complicated. So we need to step back and establish this, and how we can use in this, for example, in terms of access. Just a quick example here. So if you have, for example, a solution focused on cloud security posture management, so you need to have the user, they need to have a specific permission that you need to have this user integrate with this tool, and this user will be responsible for sharing the organization access or permissions with this tool. So if this tool has AI, how this AI will treat your identity. So this is a kind of discussions that I participated in event 2 months ago in Las Vegas about that, about the identity access management in terms of AI. So it's still a challenge, but unfortunately, if you don't have a process established, it will be very difficult to define or to classify what kind of data I can share with this kind of tool.
Absolutely. I think it really starts with having, a corporate-wide AI policy and risk assessment. That's the starting points. How do you want to use AI, and how do you want, what do you need to do to protect the AI that you're using? So it comes in a twofold process. How to get the efficiency and benefit out of it, but at the same time, how do you protect your use of it? And it really starts at the kind of top level where you're thinking about the policies, your strategy, and a risk assessment. Once you've established that, then the next thing is your company is probably already using AI. Your employees are already using it, whether you know it or not. Then the next stage is that what data is being then interacted and used by those different AI systems, and then allows you to put what controls and what protection needs to be in place. But if you probably need to get a start as quickly as possible on that, because it's difficult to change it after if you're not actually doing it proactively.
You are in mute.
I'm mute. Yes. One last question here, just quickly. But among these trends, what do you think? Which one do you think that provides the quickest win in terms of risk mitigation for organizations that are still struggling to implement security?
I think for me, it's the business resiliency one. I think that's the one that has multiple areas that can definitely help the organization. resiliency in your identities, resiliency in your data, resiliency in your access and your authorization to different environments. It really helps you. One is, going through that process of assume that your identity is all about been compromised. What would your steps be in order to remediate? So the business resiliency one, I think, because it has multiple impacts to the business, and it is a business initiative, it's the one that you can tend to get more, budget for, and it's the one that can actually have a quick win and immediate impact. If an incident does occur, a lot of the rest are by force, regulation you have to do, and others are strategic. But business resiliency has a direct business impact, and that's the one that can help you get budget, but it's also, I think, the one that you can get a quick win out of as well.
In my perspective, I can mention, I think, two. I know that's one, but the problem is about the name, like in terms of, or maybe who will be responsible for this win, the quickest win, in terms of, like, in my perspective, technical perspective, let's say I should say it will be like DevSecOps future or security as code. Will be interesting, because so many companies right now, they are starting in the cloud native module. So if they are starting in this module, so it's basically based on code in terms of business. So if it's code, we should look into that. But in terms of whatever business you have, maybe zero trust, and again, so here we have a problem about word or buzzword in terms of maturity of zero trust. But I think it's but in the end of the day, I think this two, in my perspective, top is totally related to the resilience, as Joe, mentioned it. And I think it's, again, it's just 10 trends. We should, or maybe we should mention it more than 20, because there are a bunch of other trends. But again, I mentioned it, those two, like secure as code and DevSecOps and maybe zero trust. I think this is, in my perspective, but it's totally linked. It's linked to the resilience. Mm-hmm. What about you, Dave? What are your thoughts about?
I like the human race, man. What I see is that many people, many companies, they struggle with cybersecurity because of people. They implement the state of the art. They put the most expensive products in their shelves, but in the end, the employee clicks on a malicious link.
because they didn't implement the first P, which is a process based on zero trust,
and the resiliency, because it should help them recover quickly. So it doesn't really matter what they click on, because you've got the right processes in place to recover from it. So
yeah, well, so we are all together on this. Guys, it's been a privilege to talk to you today. I would love to spend much more time here talking to you. It's a pleasure, but we need to wrap this up. And I think I will start with you, Joseph, because we're bringing here your ebook, Identity Security Intelligence. So I want to hear your final key takeaways, and of course, I let yourself talk about this special gift for everyone who is watching this webinar.
Absolutely, man. Thanks. This is something that I really enjoyed writing. I put it together. It was something that was in my mind for a while, and it really is that it's about how to make sure that you can measure your identity journey and security metrics very successfully. What's all the things you need to be thinking about? What's the integrations? What's the interoperability? What's the discovery path? And a lot of the things we talked about, all the trends, are actually kind of really related to a lot of the steps and best practices within the book. So I definitely recommend that if you're looking and you're planning your strategy for 2026, this might be a good read over the holidays. It's something you can do quickly, and really think about how you can get a really quick head start to your 2026 in a successful way. And how do you measure the success of what your plans are? Because it's really important to have the metrics that associate to it. So this is really about helping you understand all the different assets and fundamentals in identity security, and bring it together to give you that central visibility, that central control, and the ability to measure your way to a zero trust strategy, to a resiliency, to the human side of things, to the platform side, All of that is within this book. So definitely recommend get a download of it, go read it. Let me know your thoughts. If there's things you would like to see added to it, or if things that you liked within the book that has been very valuable for you. So yeah, it's definitely it's something that I'm proud of, and proud that Segura has been able to deliver such a great book to the attendees.
Great. Just point your phones to the QR code, and you're gonna be able to download the ebook. Enjoy your reading. How about you, Pires? Want to hear your final thoughts, man?
No, just for me, thank you so much again. It was a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to talk with friends and talk about, threads, about, trendings. And yeah, I think it's my main takes here is just thinking about your organization, think about the future of your organization, how you can, grow your security posture, and how you can establish this in terms of, defining process, communicate people, and then after that, go to using your budget in the right way. So maybe you are thinking, okay, Filipe, what is the best tool? I don't know. You need to know about your company. You need to know about your infrastructure. You need to know about your process. You need to know about your people. And after that, you need to know about your product. I can recommend you a few products, but you need to be established this process and the people communicated. And after that, let's move forward.
Yeah. Well, I think my main message here is what we brought during this conversation, the 3 Ps: people, processes, and product. They walk all together. When you're evaluating the process, well, before implementing the tools, please make sure to implement the processes, train the people, and implement the product. And remember, not always if you take a leader on the MQ or in the wave report, it's the best solution for you. You need to evaluate what are the features, what are the capabilities, what are the use cases that each one of the vendors offer, and how they are adherent to your business. This is how you're going to evaluate which product is the best for you to protect you and protect your company. Okay, so that's my last message. Guys, thank you very much again. I wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas for every one of you, and hope we all have a wonderful 2026 together. Looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, see you next year.
See you next year. Bye bye, guys.
Bye bye. See you.
See you.